Why choosing mercy over judgment might be the most radical way to reflect God's love. It started with a crime. Not a dramatic one. No bank heist. No car chase. No headline news. It was something more mundane. More common, but just as devastating. A young man, barely out of high school, made a mistake. He stole from the store where he worked. A few $100s taken in the dark, when he thought no one would notice. He was caught, of course. Security cameras, suspicious eyes, a little too much spending too fast. When the manager confronted him, the truth crumbled out of his mouth like dry bread. He was shaking, pale, ready for whatever judgment would come. But instead of calling the police, something extraordinary happened. The store owner, a woman in her 50s, a Christian, stood silently. She didn't yell. She didn't call him names. She looked at him and said 6 words that would change his entire life. "I choose mercy over judgment today." And in that moment, everything in the room shifted. He collapsed, sobbing, not because he was afraid of punishment, but because he had no idea what to do with that kind of love. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever been on the edge of judgment? Or maybe, have you ever stood with the power to pass judgment? And right then, what would have happened if you had chosen mercy instead? I believe that right there, in that trembling, electric moment between justice and compassion, is where the most radical reflection of God's love shines. That's what this video is about. Because the world will tell you, justice is fair, judgment is earned, mercy is soft, it's weak, it lets people get away with things. But Jesus says something totally different, something that flips the whole table. And if you stick with me through this story, I promise you'll never look at mercy the same way again. So let's jump into this. And trust me, what you're about to hear, it's going to shake your heart wide open. There's a scene in the Gospel of John, chapter 8, that might be one of the most gripping stories in all of Scripture. You've probably heard of it. A woman is caught in the act of adultery, and the religious leaders, they're hungry for justice. They drag her into the temple courts, toss her before Jesus, and say, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act. The law says to stone her. What do you say?" Now imagine this with me. A woman, terrified, humiliated, exposed, a crowd, tight with tension, fists gripping stones, and Jesus, silent, writing in the dirt. They push again, and he looks up and says, "Let the one who is without sin cast the first stone." Boom. No defense, no debate, just a mirror. Suddenly, the ones who came to accuse have to face their own brokenness. And one by one, they drop their stones and walk away. Now here's the twist. Jesus, the only one truly without sin, the only one with the right to condemn her, doesn't. He says, "Woman, where are your accusers? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she whispers. "Then neither do I go now and leave your life of sin." What just happened? Mercy that doesn't ignore the sin, but instead speaks to the heart behind it. Mercy that confronts with love instead of crushing with shame. Mercy that restores instead of destroying. Let me ask you again. Have you ever dropped your stone? Or are you still holding on to it? I'll be honest, I've held stones in my hands. Judgment feels powerful, clean, safe. It creates distance between me and them. But every time I read that story, I hear Jesus asking me, "Are you so sure you're without sin? Are you really ready to throw that?" And every time, I have to put it down. But what if we did that before someone's on the ground? What if we chose mercy as a way of life, not as an exception? I met a man once who lived that out every single day. His name was David. He ran a halfway house for ex-convicts, people just released from prison with nowhere else to go. Some were violent, Some were addicts. Some had burned every bridge they'd ever known. But David, he welcomed them, every single time. I asked him once, "How do you do it? Don't you ever get burned?" He smiled and said something I'll never forget. "I expect to get burned." Mercy isn't about avoiding pain. It's about reflecting the heart of God, especially when it hurts. That floored me. Because honestly, we like the idea of mercy when it's safe, when it's tidy. But the mercy of Jesus? It's not neat. It's messy. It costs. It heals through wounds. Think of the cross. You want to talk about the ultimate act of choosing mercy over judgment? Look at Jesus hanging there. Not for his own crimes, but for ours. Beaten, bleeding, crowned with thorns. And as the soldiers mock him, as people spit on him, what does he say? "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." Are you kidding me? That's not just mercy. That's radical mercy. Undeserved, unstoppable, eternal. And here's the crazy part. We're not just called to admire it. We're called to live it. Jesus didn't say, "Blessed are the judgmental." He said, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." Matthew chapter 5 verse 7. But that brings up something tough, doesn't it? How do you show mercy to someone who hurt you, betrayed you, lied to you? How do you reflect the love of Christ when everything in you screams for justice? I'll tell you a story. My friend Jenna went through a brutal divorce. Her husband cheated on her, publicly, repeatedly, and when it all came out, it destroyed her. She felt humiliated, shattered, furious. And yet, a year later, when he was hospitalized and abandoned by everyone else, she showed up. She brought him meals. She helped him with bills. She prayed for him. People said she was crazy, weak, a doormat. But she told me, through tears, "This isn't about him. It's about who I become when I choose love over bitterness. Christ had mercy on me. How could I not reflect that?" That's what I'm talking about. Mercy isn't about ignoring truth. It's about loving so fiercely that truth becomes an invitation, not a weapon. I know this is heavy, but stick with me. Because if you and I actually live this out, if we start making mercy our instinct instead of judgment, people will notice, they won't understand it, and they'll ask you why. And that's when we get to say, "Because that's what Jesus did for me." But we're not done yet. Because what happens when you show mercy, and it doesn't change the person? When they keep hurting you, when they take advantage. That's where we're headed next. And trust me, it's going to turn everything you thought about strength, power, and God's love upside down. What if mercy doesn't work? The hidden power in loving those who refuse to change. So what happens when mercy doesn't seem to work? When you forgive someone, and they betray you again. When you let go of anger, but the other person keeps hurting people. When you show compassion, and the world calls you a fool. Let's not sugarcoat it. Mercy is risky. It exposes your heart. It makes you vulnerable. And sometimes it hurts like nothing else. I want to tell you about a man named Mark. He was a youth pastor in a rough neighborhood. His whole mission was to reach out to kids that the world had given up on. Gang members, addicts, kids with records. One of those kids was named Dre. Dre was smart, charismatic, but angry, and the streets had shaped him hard. Mark saw something deeper, though. He poured into him. He mentored Dre for years, helped him get clean, get a GED, even enroll in community college. Everyone said Dre was a success story. Until one night, Mark got a call from the police. Dre had robbed a gas station. The clerk had been beaten. Cameras caught it all. Mark was crushed. He felt betrayed, like all his love had been thrown in his face. People told him, "You were too soft. You should have known better. He never really changed. But you know what Mark did? He went to the jail, sat across from Dre, and said, "You let me down. You broke trust. But I'm still here, and I still believe who God created you to be is not gone. I forgive you." Do you feel that? That kind of mercy, the kind that shows up even after the worst disappointment, is not weak, it's not naive, it's a revolution. It's God's power made perfect through love. Let's be real, our culture glorifies revenge, cutting people off, canceling. We celebrate justice when it comes with punishment. But mercy? Mercy feels radical because it requires hope. Hope that someone can still change. Hope that there's more to their story than their worst mistake. Hope that love really can reach where fear and judgment fail. Let me ask you, who in your life needs that kind of hope right now? Who's that person you've written off? Maybe it's someone who betrayed you, lied about you, hurt your family, or maybe it's you. Maybe you think you don't deserve mercy. But listen to me, Jesus already gave it to you. Romans chapter 5 verse 8 says, "But God demonstrates His own love for us in this, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." Did you catch that? While we were still sinners, not after we got our act together, not once we proved ourselves. While we were still lost, still selfish, still blind, He chose mercy. That's the heartbeat of the gospel. And when we choose mercy for others, even when it doesn't make sense, we're not just being nice people, we're being mirrors of Christ. There was a woman I met once, Linda. Her daughter had been murdered by a drunk driver. The man who did it was a repeat offender. Everyone expected her to pursue the maximum sentence. But at the sentencing hearing, Linda stood up and stunned the courtroom. She said, "What you did destroyed my world. But I'm choosing not to destroy yours. I forgive you. I want you to get help. I want your life to mean something more than this." The man collapsed in tears. Years later, he got clean, got out of prison. Now he speaks in schools about the consequences of drunk driving. But what he always says is this: "Her mercy changed me. Her mercy saved me." Do you see it? Judgment can end a story, but mercy can redeem one. Now don't get me wrong. Mercy doesn't mean erasing consequences. It doesn't mean trusting blindly or ignoring justice. But it does mean refusing to let hatred write the final chapter. And it means we surrender the right to play God with someone else's future. Think about Jesus on the cross again. Two criminals hang beside him. One mocks, the other gasps through pain and says, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus, with blood on his brow, with the world laughing at him, with death inches away, he turns and says, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Are you serious? This guy never made it to synagogue, never repaid what he stole, never got a second chance to fix his life, and yet, grace found him anyway. That's the power of mercy. It reaches beyond time, beyond performance. It invades the darkest moment and speaks eternity into it. So let me turn the question around. Who needs to hear those words from you? Who needs to know they're not beyond redemption? Maybe you've been waiting for the perfect moment to forgive, to make it all feel fair. But hear me. Mercy doesn't wait for fairness. Mercy creates freedom. I know what some of you might be thinking right now. But if I forgive them, they'll never learn. They'll think it's okay. They'll just hurt me again. And you're not wrong to wrestle with that. You're human. But here's the deeper truth. You don't forgive to change them. You forgive to reflect Him. And that act alone can be the most powerful sermon you'll ever preach. Let me tell you something that happened in my own life. I had a friend, a close one. We grew up together, did ministry together, shared secrets, dreams, prayers. And then one day, I found out he had been slandering me behind my back, for months, to people I trusted. I was wrecked, betrayed. Everything in me wanted to confront, to expose, to defend myself. But I remembered Jesus, staying silent before his accusers, choosing the cross instead of vengeance. So I prayed, a lot. And eventually, I reached out, not to confront, but to reconcile. I told him what I knew. I told him it hurt. And then I told him, I forgive you, and I still love you. He wept. And though it took time, our friendship was restored. That moment, it taught me something no sermon ever could. Mercy breaks chains. Not just for the other person, but for you. When you hold on to judgment, it poisons you, but when you let it go, when you choose mercy, you step into the freedom of Christ. Because the truth is, we all stand guilty. And if God gave us what we deserved, none of us would stand. But through Jesus, we receive what we don't deserve. Every day, mercy new every morning. So how dare we not offer it to others? This is the radical invitation of the gospel: to love when it costs, to forgive when it's undeserved, to show mercy, not just once, but as a way of life. Because when we do that, we reflect something the world cannot explain. We reflect God. And now we come to the moment of challenge. Will you step into that kind of life? Will you drop your stone? Will you speak mercy instead of bitterness? Because in the next segment, I'm going to show you how your act of mercy, yes, yours, can be the seed of revival, healing, and transformation in a way you've never imagined. How one act of mercy can spark a chain reaction that changes everything. I want you to imagine a domino. Just one. Small, seemingly insignificant, but when it falls, it hits another, and another, and another, until the motion it started reaches farther than it ever could have known. That's what mercy is. One act, one decision, one choice to love instead of condemn, and the ripple effect? It's unstoppable. Let me show you what I mean. There was a young woman named Rachel who grew up in a home filled with bitterness. Her mother resented her father. Her father drank. Arguments were routine. Love was rare. And Rachel, she carried all of it in her heart. She swore she'd never be like them. But fast forward 20 years, and she found herself screaming at her own kids in the kitchen, the same way her parents had screamed at her. One night, she broke, sat on the floor, crying into her hands. God, she said, I don't want to be this. I don't want to pass this pain on. And that night, something shifted. She didn't just pray for healing. She called her father. He was older now, sick, lonely, and when he answered, she said, Dad, I forgive you. I've held this pain for so long, but I'm letting it go. I want to know you again, not for what you did, but for who you are. And her father broke down, sobbed like a child. From that moment, everything changed. They started talking. Her heart began healing. Her children saw mercy in action. And guess what? They learned how to love through brokenness because she chose to be the domino. One act of mercy, years of transformation. That's the legacy of mercy. It doesn't just heal one person. It rewrites generations. And here's what Jesus knew that the world still doesn't get. Judgment might bring order, but mercy brings life. Think about the early church. They were persecuted, hunted, mocked, but they didn't retaliate with hatred. They didn't preach vengeance. They loved, they forgave, they embraced their enemies, and in doing so, They turned the Roman Empire upside down. That's not weakness, that's spiritual firepower. And here's the secret. When people experience undeserved love, when they see someone respond with mercy instead of malice, it wrecks them in the best way. Because it reveals something deeper than religion. It reveals the heart of God. Let's bring it home. You might not be able to change the world overnight. You might not be a pastor or influencer or theologian. But you know what you do have. You have someone in your life right now who needs mercy. Maybe it's a sibling you haven't spoken to in years. Maybe it's your ex. Maybe it's someone at work, someone at church, someone who disappointed you, betrayed you, or simply let you down. And maybe, just maybe, God is calling you to drop the judgment and pick up the cross. Because when Jesus said, "Love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you," he wasn't giving us a suggestion. He was handing us the key to heaven on earth. Now I know, showing mercy doesn't always come with happy endings. Sometimes the person doesn't change. Sometimes they don't respond. Sometimes the pain still lingers. But here's what does change. You. When you choose mercy, your heart softens, your spirit heals, you stop carrying the weight of judgment, you start walking in the freedom of Christ. And whether they ever thank you or not, God sees. Hebrews chapter 6 verse 10 says, "God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him as you have helped his people." So if no one else notices, he does. And if no one else values your mercy, he does. Every tear you cry, every hurt you release, every stone you drop, it's all recorded in heaven. Now let me take you one step further. What if I told you that your act of mercy could be the very thing that opens someone's eyes to Jesus? Not a sermon, not a Bible verse, but your forgiveness, your compassion, your refusal to give up on someone that everyone else wrote off. That's how revival begins. Not with stadiums, not with microphones, but with one heart choosing to love like Christ in the face of hurt. So I'll ask you plainly, who is your enemy right now? Who's the person you've been avoiding, resenting, judging? And what would happen if, instead of waiting for them to change, you chose to show them mercy? Not because they earned it, but because Jesus gave it freely to you. This might be the hardest thing you ever do, but it will also be the most powerful. Because when you reflect God's mercy, you become a living invitation to His kingdom. You become the sermon, the miracle, the light. And friend, this world is desperate for that light. So go. Forgive. Let go. Reach out. Shock someone with kindness. Disarm someone with grace. And when they ask you why, tell them about Jesus. Tell them about the cross. Tell them about the Savior who looked at his executioners with bloody eyes and whispered, "Father, forgive them." That's not just a moment in history. That's a way of life. And you and I, we get to live it every single day. So today, make the radical choice. Don't pick up the stone. Pick up the mercy. Because that might just be the boldest, most revolutionary, most Christ-like thing you'll ever do. And it could change the world, starting with your heart.